Hello, Mama Film Village. I'm Lela Meadow-Conner. Thank you for joining Mama Film's Community Cinema Convo series, a video podcast where film fans can join the conversation and support the work of stories and storytellers we love. Mama Film is a film series to showcase films with themes of nurturing and to ignite conversation about the human experience. Since we're not physically able to gather in our micro cinema here in Wichita to experience movies right now, we're excited to have this platform to connect us, at least in some way, with people from all over the world and all over the country today. Today we're talking about Uncorked, which is streaming now on Netflix. It's a film about following one's dreams, but also about family and the dynamics that come into play with parents and children and our expectations of one another. And it features wine, so it's sort of the epitome of a mama film. Today we have some very wonderful guests with us. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our co-host, Eric Moore, joining us from LA, where he works as a programmer for AFI, the American Film Institute Film Festivals. Jennifer McDonald, owner and operator of Jenny Dawn Cellars, Wichita's first urban winery, and the writer and director of Uncorked, Prentice Penny, also joining us from LA. You will also know Prentice from his television work, including Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Insecure, of course, just renewed for season 5. Congrats on that. We're big fans of your work. So Eric and I will moderate the first part of the conversation and begin with some questions. If anyone who's joining us has a question or comment, please feel free to type it in the chat. Then as we get towards the end of the hour, we're going to turn it over to Jenny to do a wine tasting with us. So if you don't have your bottle nearby, make sure to get one. Jenny and I will be tasting her 2018 Sonoma Chardonnay. I've already been tasting it, obviously. So if you have something that you'd like to taste with us, grab that. Now's a good time, and let's get started.
All right, so let's start with Prentice. So thank you so much for joining us again. I'm always excited when we get to talk to filmmakers. Your work is well known in television, but film is a totally different medium from the films, totally different medium than television, and it takes obviously a longer time to make from inception to finally making it on the big screen. You make a film for an audience, obviously, and you put your heart and soul into it, and then you get accepted to a big festival and can start planning your premiere. And in this case, you got into South by Southwest, and all of a sudden, COVID-19 pandemic hits. What has it been like in this unfortunate situation to put your movie out there in the world?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, we were experiencing it like people in real time. So, I mean, we'd actually found out we got into South by last year, at the end of last year. So it was something that we had obviously were sort of looking forward to. And I was in Sundance actually promoting some stuff for Insecure. And so I was really getting excited, obviously, because I was like, oh, I'm going to kind of have these kind of a similar experience in some way at South by. And so, and obviously things are sort of, dominoes are falling as we're, again, finding them in real time. And so obviously you're upset and you're hurt, but you're processing it in a way that's incomprehensible to obviously what we know now. You know what I mean? At first it's, you're hearing conflicting things of it's not that bad and this and that. And then obviously we know what it is now. But it wasn't just that. We were watching like all of our marketing, we were having screenings all over the country. We were having them in New York and Miami and Tennessee, in Memphis where we filmed it, in Chicago. So I was looking forward to like having this sort of come out in that sort of platform. And obviously, you're impacted by that. But the blessing of that was that, so many people had to be at home, and that as a result, like the movie got to be number 1. It came out Friday, and by Sunday it was the number 1 movie in America. And so you're just like, whether I don't know, everybody's spirituality is different, but for me, I was like, God kind of works all those things, for good, and it finds blessings in all those amazing ways. And so to me, that was the thing that I thought audiences found the movie much faster than had the movie come out and maybe it has like a slow drip over time, that where people find it. And so I was just thankful, obviously. I was thankful that my mom watched it. So I was just like glad that so that being when I went to bed that night, it was like number 8. And I was like stunned. I was just like, I can't even believe it's there. Because Tiger King is out and all these other crazy things that people are watching. And so, yeah, it was just it was such a blessing to have it be seen. And obviously I was very thankful because there are people at South by that didn't have distribution yet. Like I didn't have to worry about at least those things, there was, or if it's going to be out in the theater, and obviously there's nobody in theaters right now. So again, all those things ended up being blessings. And so I've tried to like, once I process, hey, South by's kind of over, these things are happening, I just kind of like let it go at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a joy to be able to watch it at home with a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And, like everybody else. I'm just kind of curious, what kind of reactions have you had from the audience, and how have they been getting feedback to you? Is it social media? Is it like, how have you kind of been hearing about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's obviously in the world we live in now. You can like, touch a filmmaker or an actor or whatever and say, hey, I responded to this. So obviously, like critically, it's done really well, and it's in terms of people like responding to it has been great. Like I've been really, to me, what's been really great is like, because again, it's not a movie that I think like studios were asking for. Like it's about a Black family, specifically two Black men being like flawed and simple and very basic. And for me, a big inspiration was like watching movies like Good Will Hunting or Manchester by the Sea, where like typically white actors in that way can kind of be basic and generic and father-son stories, whereas a lot of people of color stories are about the father being absent as the crux of their conflict. Not just they just have issues as two men that have nothing to do with like being a present father or not. So I was not sure how the movie was going to play, to be honest, because so much of the movies last year were all about race and culture and in a very one-to-one way, right? And so this movie wasn't doing that. But I think in the wake of movies like The Photograph that Stella Meggy did, which is just sort of talking about Black people being in love without any sort of other like white thing hanging over it, just started to show movies that were kind of going maybe in that direction. And I think this movie kind of followed in that footstep. But I think to see imagery of, again, like a Black man in Paris and bike riding through there, and like just again, imagery that, again, white counterparts get to go to Under the Tuscan Sun and, Midnight in Paris and As Good as It Gets. And like, again, Bridget Jones' Diary, like we don't get to play in those. Like, I feel like in movies, most Black people get to go to like Atlanta or Miami in a movie. That's as much as we travel, but we travel all over the world. And so, but we never really see that reflected in cinema, at least American cinema. So I've just been overwhelmed by that. And really also too, the Black wine community, which is, I feel like, that's an audience that, and I thought I knew a lot about, obviously, songs and stuff, having done research for this, but I felt like I only knew like 10%. I thought I knew like 50%, but I wasn't thinking about, again, all the Black wine owners and to the levels of Black wine owners, like people who own vineyards versus people who make their own wine versus, all the songs and all the, Black wine journalists. Like audiences I wasn't really thinking about, that a lot of the Black wine community feeling like, oh, here's a movie that shows that we're seen and we're present in this world that doesn't always get reflected when you see movies like Bottle Shock or Sideways. Again, that feels like, hey, we occupy this space, but we're not seen.
Yeah, the representation is so important for our children and for just anyone who wants to follow their dreams and be able to do whatever they want to do in life.
Yeah.
You led me right into this, Jenny, as a winemaker and somebody who's, we lost your video. As somebody who's involved in the wine industry, what was your take on the film? Let me unmute you. Oh, there we go.
Am I back? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. I really enjoyed the film. I've actually gone through the entry level, level 1 exam through the Master Corps of Sommeliers, and it was tough. And so I felt that movie really deeply on so many levels. One, just that experience and the dynamic between Elijah and his father, and, the father not really understanding his passion and his dream until he saw it firsthand in the restaurant as Elijah was explaining the wine that he wanted and was having that conversation with the waiter. The dad kind of finally, it clicked in him that this was something that was truly a passion. And I feel like a lot of times when you're an entrepreneur or if you have a dream, not everyone's supporting you in the beginning. And you have to move mountains sometimes to get the support of your family and the people around you. And it's truly through your hard work, perseverance, and enthusiasm that you win those folks over. And so I kind of felt that really deeply. And then, for me personally, I'm the first African-American winemaker and somm and business owner here in the state of Kansas, female-wise. And so, I'm trying to open doors for others that look like me to kind of walk through, because it was definitely not easy to get to this point. And so I love seeing movies that I can personally relate to. So just all of the personal struggles that Elijah had to go to pay for his school in Paris, and then have his mom die, like people have to go through some struggles sometimes to get to where they want to be in life. And, you know, that's the reality for so many of us. And so for me, watching that film, I could relate on so many levels, and I just appreciated someone being willing to tell that story.
Yeah. That's amazing. I turned on this emoji and now I can't seem to turn it off, but bravo to you, Jenny. Anyway, this is going to be my look. So it obviously seemed realistic to you, Jenny, all the like tension and all that. I also took the introductory level class of the Master Somm exam, but this was like 5-6 years ago and I don't remember anything, and it was so much memorization, and I just kudos to like you who do this. So I watched Somm many years ago, the documentary, which I'm sure that you've all seen, and after I noticed that Dee Lynn Proctor was a producer on your film, you know, it's just watching Somm again was so interesting, like to see that like world again. So did Dee Lynn's experiences, obviously with like the exam and all in that world, it definitely informed the script and like the intensity of those moments, like
absolutely. And to how I met Dee Lynn was interesting because the whole impetus of this movie again was to show men of color kind of being basic and just having a father-son story that was just about these two men figuring out, which is a lot based on like myself and my father. My family had the furniture store that my grandfather started, he had a stroke, my dad dropped out of college, took it over, and I was next in line to run it. And that's sort of the same place that Courtney, the Lucid Logic kid would sort of find themselves in, which is a very similar starting point for me. And I knew I wanted to write about a father-son story. I had become a father, and I was like, it made me reflect about me and my father and wanted to understand him differently now than just being a kid, but like now I'm a father too. And there are things I could relate to now, and I understood how he felt. And so I wanted to talk about that in a movie. And so I was not a wine drinker when I started writing the movie, but I knew I wanted to find an area where I knew I didn't want it to be about a guy who wanted to write. Like I was like, that's boring and it's not visual. But I wanted to find something that felt kind of creative, something kind of different that the father kind of couldn't wrap his head around as a career choice, that kind of felt a little bit more white collar, a little bit more elevated in some way. And I was circling some areas, but I hadn't found anything yet. And then I went to Paris for my cousin's wedding. I had never been to Paris or Europe at all. And I was like, if I'm not gonna like wine in Paris, I'm never gonna like wine. I was like, if you go to New Orleans and like don't like gumbo in New Orleans, you just don't like gumbo. That's just what it is. So I took this like wine 101 class, just because it's so intimidating. You read a label, you don't know what any of these things mean, Grand Cru, Premier Cru, this thing, that thing, whatever. And the guy made it super easy to understand. He made me understand like champagne is the region, not the drink, and told me what the things on the label mean. And I just got really into wine that whole trip. And I started watching as much things as I could about wine. And Somm was one of the things I watched. And as I kept watching Somm, I kept going, oh man, this should be what the son should want to do. And I didn't see anybody Black, though, in the documentary, at least up until the point I was watching it. And then Dee Lynn came on the screen. And I was like, oh, now I just see one. That's all I need to see. And I started, that's what I used Dee Lynn as like a big inspiration to like, it's sort of me, obviously, seeing Dee Lynn in that world. And then one of our early producers, our very first producer that we got on, Atari Turner, who produced the movie with us, said he read the script and he was like, I just want to make this movie because of my brother. And I was like, oh, who's your brother? He was like, Dee Lynn. And so that just ended up being such a blessing of marriage. He was like, yeah, and I was like, that's who I based it on. So we called Dee Lynn like right there in our meeting, and it was kind of a no-brainer from there. So then from that point, once I met Dee Lynn, I would just send him the script. And when I first sent him the script, he was like, get rid of all these wines you referenced. They're all trash. Nobody would change these wines. They're horrible wines. And he was like, they wouldn't say it like this. They would do it like this. But then also he gave me the emotional components, right? He was like, well, when I was going through this, like I had a moment like this, but this is actually what I was feeling. And I was like, oh, that's actually much more interesting than like what I had. And so that was really like a really great marriage to be able to like talk to Dee Lynn for like 3 or 4 years before we even made the movie, to talk to about like, again, that's a very specific experience. So to have a Black man who can also speak to, like, I went through some of these family things. I went through some of these things. I know what this moment is like. He was such a blessing and a help. Like, I don't think the movie would have been the same without him, for sure.
That's incredible. Yeah. I read somewhere that before it ended up being about wine, it was originally going to be about opera.
It was.
What was the story there? Just another...
It was that I knew I wanted the son to do something. It was going to be set in New York. It was going to be very different. The crux still the same. It was going to be something that I knew I always wanted something that the father couldn't kind of figure out. And I knew I wanted the son to do something that you don't typically associate. A lot of people of color occupy that space, but they do. And so at the time I was reading a lot of these articles about, again, because I think you don't think that about people sing opera, but they do. And so, or same with ballet or things that, again, spaces that we don't occupy artistically that we do. And what I was reading was there was a lot of young Black opera singers who had grown up listening to hip hop and how that influenced their opera. And I just thought, oh, that's really cool. Like, they're not running, they're not like running from who they are. They're taking the things that are me and moving that into that space. And, and so I just thought that was so, because I feel like sometimes people of color feel like they have to totally assimilate and drop their cultural identity to move into that space. And I feel like a lot of times what people of color do is we bring that swag to that space, and so we're authentically ourselves in that space as well. And so I was like, that area just seemed really ripe and interesting, and I had never really seen a thing where I saw, oh, Black people singing opera. That's not like a thing you normally associate those two things together. But as I kept developing it, it's something I just always felt kind of, there were always hiccups along the way. And so I've learned that like if things are kind of have a hiccup, kind of like put it down for a second. And obviously I'm glad I did, because then that's how the wine thing sort of found its way in.
That's cool. And as you sort of touched on before, like I can totally relate as somebody who's chosen a career in the nonprofit art sector. It took a long time for like my parents to be like, oh, you do have a job, right? My mom's actually on the call right now, but she's not, her screen is up. But so I can totally relate to that. Jenny, did you face any similar challenges like in your journey to becoming the only, African-American winemaker in Kansas? Like what was that like for you?
Absolutely. There's too many challenges to name on this short call, but even just on the business side of getting my dream financed. I went from being a home winemaker to getting my master's degree and then certification through UC Davis in enology, made wine in California for a couple years, but then wanted to have this beautiful upscale winery in downtown Wichita. I did that all in a course of 5 years, but I had to put in a lot of my own capital, raise capital, and then get bank loans. And to try and put that all together for this winery, people looked at me like, who are you? Like, you know something about wine? Like, do you know anything about business? They just totally gave me the runaround on my credentials and my ability to execute this plan. And over time, I was able to get everything that I needed because I'm here, I made it. But it took a long time for people to truly believe that I had what it took to run this business. And then, can she actually make wine? So it was just a lot of, kind of showing people as we go. So make wine, sell that batch, and then they're like, okay, so she has a track record. So I think, just building that track record, took some time. And then through there, I was able to get a lot of the resources needed.
And you did this with 2 kids as well. So, I mean, even more kudos to you, because I think a lot of us who work in like industries where we're super passionate about what we do, it's hard having children too. And like feeling like you're being a good parent while you're also like your babies or all these other little things you're juggling in your projects. So can you both relate to that?
Absolutely. Yes, work-life balance can definitely be a challenge, but when we started growing, so we've planted grapevines and we have fruit trees that we use as part of our winemaking, my family got involved. So my son and my husband are very instrumental on the growing side of our business. So it's been nice to kind of get my family involved in the process. And my daughters accompanied me out to California when I was making wine out there, and was helping me come up with descriptors and colors of the wine. So I try and engage them in the process. And then they always are here at the winery helping me out with little projects. My husband helps me build furniture or assemble furniture, I should say, and so does my son. So I try and engage them in the project so that they know this is what mom is doing when she's away from us, and that seems to help.
Yeah, I 100% echo everything she said, I mean, it's the same way with me. Like when we were filming Uncorked, like my family moved down to Memphis for 2 weeks to be a part of that. And my kids have seen me do this. And again, it's tough. Like even right now, they're like in the pool and they're just like, how long is this gonna be? Are you coming right back? You know what I mean? Like they're just like, you know, because they, you know, want that time too. And but I think to that point, it's like my youngest son like make stop motion movies, and I've tried to show, you know, and like my daughter like this theater stuff, and my wife and I really just sold a movie to Netflix. So like again, enlisting everybody kind of, it's like, oh, this is like kind of cool and interesting and different. So I 100% agree in terms of bringing them on board.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry about that. I was muted and I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So one of the things, so you touched upon this a little bit, Prentice, but the way that some people talk about the nuances of barbecue is not that unlike wine. Yet with, you know, wine has all these class and race stereotypes around it that make it hard for many of us to relate to. I love how approachable you were able to make wine and how you were able to discuss it to those of us who are a little bit wine illiterate, and with the comparing of types of wine to hip hop artists and the breakdown of the labels, that was really amazing. So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, two things. One, how did you go about kind of going about making it approachable to an audience that may not be wine literate? And then also, you know, how hip hop, barbecue, Memphis don't often get paired with wine in the general media and storytellers. How you go about kind of creating a story that is tackling race and class politics without having it be something that really hits people over the head?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the first question, and those are great questions. I think to the first one, I knew I needed a scene early on in the movie that made the audience feel the way I felt when I took that class. That immediately like demystified it and didn't make you intimidated. Because I think, again, you see this movie about wine, you're like, I don't have to know a bunch about wine. I don't really drink wine. And I felt like I wanted the audience not to worry, like, oh, you're not gonna have to know anything about wine to watch this movie. It's not, it's a wine movie, but it's not really about wine. Again, it could have been about opera. It could have been about lots of things, right? So I never wanted you to get caught in the weeds of like, do I have to know anything about wine to watch this movie? I think in the same way about Psalm, I didn't know anything about wine before I watched Psalm, and that is the most intense thing. But I think they make it, to me, I always equate Psalm as like the hoop dreams of wine, like the hoop dream documentary about basketball. It's just like people trying to achieve their dreams, and this is just the field they're in. You don't have to know about wine. They kind of tell you everything you need to kind of know. So to me, I knew I needed this scene early on. And again, to that point, I felt like, well, here's a black man in Memphis. He's talking to another black woman, and they're like, you know, like they're 29, 30. So like rap would be an easy way to like, just make this be like, hey, I'm gonna just describe this. Because I think, again, getting caught into the floral notes sometimes for people just is like, I don't even know what's a floral note. So I was just like, I need the audience to be like, they are children in some way. And like, you know hip hop, if you know Jay-Z, you know Kanye West, you know Drake, you'll understand why Drake is a Riesling. Jay-Z is the godfather of hip hop, and Chardonnay is like the daddy. And then, you know, Pinot Grigio got a little spices. Kanye West is gonna go take your, you know, like your Grammy Award from Taylor Swift when you go up there. So I just wanted people to like, okay, I got it. Like I'm clear on what this is. I don't need to know anything else about wine. And I'm in, right? It also, and then the scene obviously has dual function to have her start to like him. I mean, it has lots of functions, right? But primarily the function was just to make the audience comfortable. That was primary. So that was sort of why I did that. And I wanted him to do it from a space that, again, wasn't about a wine perspective, was just like a one-to-one, me to you, right? Again, about people of color taking themselves into that world and not feeling like he has to say these things in a different way. Like I have to speak over your head. Like if he was talking to a wine person, he probably would talk in those terms. But he's just trying to talk to like a regular person who doesn't know anything about this. So he's not trying to talk over her head. But to your second point, to me, it was very important. I feel like imagery, I feel like, again, barbecue feels like a common thing, or like a common food, but it's an art to do it really well, because it takes time to really make good barbecue. And every wine isn't great either. There's bad wine out there, you know what I mean? So this idea that like all wine is upper class and all barbecue is lower class, to me is just like basically everything like white is great, everything like down home and black is like not this. And I wanted to show that the character, Lewis, pours a lot of time, excuse me, and energy into this. It's a love. in the same way that the people love like making wine. So to me, that was very important, was not to have show these things are on par with each other and not one is better than the other. It's that they're both, to do them great, take the same level of care and love across any platform. And it's not about, because this is associated as a white thing and this is associated as like a Black down home thing, it's any less important. So that was important, but without having to comment about it. And that's why I feel imagery sometimes says those things without having to like, here's the message, you know, you're just, here it is. And we don't have to like make a bunch of comments about it.
Yeah, I think you walked the line very well. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So we're talking a little about, you know, wine and it being a very predominantly white male business. So Jenny, as a woman of color, and we talked a little bit about like some of the, you know, hurdles you've had, but like, what's it like being sort of ingraining yourself into this world that's so predominantly white and so predominantly male? Or am I wrong and it's becoming more, you know, diverse?
I think here in Kansas in particular, we're seeing more gender diversity. So we're seeing a lot more women come into the wine industry, which is great. But the wine industry definitely kind of looks like the general population of Kansas. And so there's very, very few, you know, ethnic diverse winemakers or wine business owners in the state of Kansas. So there's a gentleman who owns a sangria company who's African American also. And so besides the two of us, like, that's it. That's it here in Kansas. But as you look at nationwide, I've been able to connect with several other, you know, Black winemakers, and that's been great. So there's an African American Vintners Association. And then last year, we were able to put this Black wine experience together that Hughes Society had at Essence Festival. So a lot of us got together in New Orleans and poured wine at Essence Festival. So it's nice to have that group to collaborate with. But then also, you know, I spent a lot of time going to the wineries here in Kansas and just learning all about their business models and plans. And the people were helpful until I got really close to opening. And then they're like, oh, she's serious. Okay. You know, and so I just think for me, I came from the corporate America background. So I had to work with all types of people, and I would go into a lot of rooms and be the only one of color at the table. So I was kind of used to that, you know, coming from corporate America, moving into the wine industry, it was kind of the same. But I think for me, just being professional, taking time to educate myself, having a good product, and just being, you know, enthusiastic and direct and not being discouraged. So it's like, they can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, but this is what I'm trying to do. And I know that if I work hard and have the right resources and the right team and mentorship, I'm going to get there. There were a whole lot of people who tried to discourage me along the way, and I just kind of pushed them aside.
Yeah. And so Prentice, I'm curious, kind of shifting gears a little bit. How did you find Mamadou, and what was it like working with somebody who maybe is a little bit greener and basically getting him to carry this entire film? He did an amazing job.
Mamadou was awesome. I mean, I had seen him obviously in stuff. He had done like Patty Cakes and The Get Down on Netflix, where he plays Grandmaster Flash. But I had a meeting. We were at the same agency, and he had read the script and was like, "I'd love to like meet about it." And I always knew I wanted Elijah to be somebody that was new. I also wanted the audience to kind of come into this where you're like, I've seen that guy in like 5, you know, movies already. Like I already know what he can do. I really wanted the audience to find a lot of, and I've done that. We've done that on Insecure. A lot is like finding new talent, and I believe like it's important to not just usher the door, certainly for people of color who are writers and directors, but also actors. I think sometimes too, like Hollywood will take more chances on like young white talent, and then for like the black talent, like, well, let's get the hot rapper. Let's put Lil Nas X in this thing, and it may not always be right, but like the synergy is right. And it's no not to rappers that act. Of course, there's a bunch of them, but I feel like something like that's the easy thing as opposed to like let's cultivate talent too. And so I saw him and we met. We had a great meeting, and then obviously you have a great meeting. You don't know. He auditioned, and we saw a lot of people, and his audition within 10 seconds was amazing. It was amazing. It was, you know, funny. I think he did the scene where he had to tell his dad, I don't want to run the restaurant. So there's things that are comedic, things that are, you know, serious. And he was just amazing. And in every scene he did, he just brought, you know, so much life to, and just had so much great questions. And you know, he's from the Yale School of Drama. So like, you know, he was in school with, you know, Winston Duke and all that sort of like new crop of like young black talent coming out of that, you know, area. And, but you know, he just was awesome. I mean, I knew he would be good, but he was beyond amazing, I thought, in this movie. And I think like people are going to be excited. And I think too, as a director, you know, you're often linked, you know, your career is often linked to the talent you find. You know, so when you think about something like Scorsese, you're like, oh, he was putting like Harvey Keitel and De Niro and Joe Pesci and stuff way before, you know, any of those, like now where they're already those guys. And I think there's something, you know, beautiful about saying like, oh, I'm gonna like we're gonna come up together in a certain way and like ushering kind of a new era of things. And so to me, he was just such a blessing, and I was thankful for everything he did. He was amazing.
Yeah, he was really phenomenal in that role. And then, I mean, the cast overall is just fantastic. Courtney Vance and Niecy Nash, I mean, they're amazing. But here we get to see them have this great chemistry that just lifts up both of their performances. Can you talk about working with these two very accomplished actors, and like how you as a director built their on-screen relationship? Because they're just so phenomenal as the parents.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it started from a place of like, I wanted to always show that this is a black couple, even though they're older, like they love each other. They still like romantic, like they get it in. Like I was like, cause I felt like the trope is gonna be a husband like complains about his wife, and the wife is like, my husband is stupid. And I just was like, I know I'm kind of basing on my grandparents who had been together until my grandfather passed for like 50 years. And they were always hand holding till my till he died in his 80s. I mean, that's just how they were. And I was like, that's beautiful. That's what I always, again, seen in the older generations in Black movies typically, you know? And so I wanted to see, again, without having to comment on it, it's just who they are, the characters are. And so, but I wrote the part for Niecy. I had worked with Niecy in 2008 on a short-lived sitcom, and I just had she told me stories about her life, and as I kept hearing Sylvia, I just kept hearing Niecy. And so I just wrote the part for her, and when I told her I did, she just agreed to do it. Didn't even read the script. She just was like, yeah, I'm in. And then she read the script. We got the money, she read the script, and then she was like, I love this even more. I think, and they had also done a movie together. Like they had done Cookie's Fortune with Robert Altman. So I kind of put myself now in a Robert Altman thing where I was able to put Niecy and Courtney together. It's like me and Robert Altman. Those are the only two people who see that connection. But they were just great. I mean, the great thing about Courtney, and what I think they had a good thing, which is you just let Niecy be Niecy. But what I mean by that is like people think Niecy is like just being, and like she's not. Like typically I think people have seen like she is on Claws where you're like she's very vampy and stuff like this. But here she's just being like a woman from Memphis that works in a barbecue. Like she's really regular. She like she has one scene where she gets to kind of dress up. But for the most part, she's mostly like wig on, I'm wearing a barbecue shirt, and I'm just regular. And so there's this thing I think people don't give her enough credit for, and I think you see it when you see stuff like When They See Us, and I hope you see it in movies like this, where you're like, Niecy has so much range. Like I'm like, Niecy's and she can do comedy and drama, and there's not a lot of people that can do both well. And so she would give you something dramatic, like she would ad-lib something super comedic, but then she'd do something really dramatic, which is like in the scene when Courtney basically comes and she's on her final, when she's like the last time we see her alive. And that scene was originally ending where she basically goes, you gotta like accept, like that's what he's gonna do. And like, you gotta deal with it. But she kept going and she kept saying, she was like, sit down with me. And she's like, did you eat today? And it's no jokes. It's just, even in her dying moments, like Niecy was like, Sylvia's a caretaker. Even in this moment, she's checking on her husband. And that was all ad-lib. That was like, they just kept, I never yelled cut right away. I just always, because you never know what you're gonna get. And they just totally improv that moment. And we had like a big wide shot, and they just improv that moment. And I was like, it made me tear up at the monitor, because I was like, that's a moment you can't write. Like, that's exactly it. That's who those two people are. Even in her dying moment, she wants to make sure her husband's okay. That's Sylvia. And she wants to check in the middle of her life. That's who she is. And so then in the coverage, we just shot it. But that was a moment that wasn't scripted, and it's not funny. It's just a real husband and wife moment. And so that's the range that she has, that was just like, you just let her find the genius that she's gonna find. And then Courtney just asked so many amazing questions. He just pushed me to ask more questions about Lewis. And I mean, he's Courtney B. Vance. I mean, you know, I don't know what else you have to say about that. And he was just great, because he just knows how to do, like, and I always saw Elijah's a lot like my dad, Lewis is a lot like my dad, who can just do a lot with little. Just looking at you, he can make you feel stupid. You know, like the one direction I told him just about Lewis in general was like, Lewis isn't pressed ever. Lewis applies pressure. He's not ever stressed. And so when you're with Elijah, all you gotta do is look at him, and the son's gonna, what? I know you thinking something, you know what I mean? And so Courtney just knows how to do so much with little. And I think sometimes people have a tendency to want to overdo the drama, and Courtney just underdoes it, and it becomes so much more powerful.
Such a great duo. So you touched a little bit on Scorsese and Altman. Who are some of your directorial and storytelling influences, director-wise?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those guys. Yeah, I mean, Kubrick is a big influencer. Spike is a big one. I would definitely say Spielberg is a big one. My favorite filmmakers are the Coen brothers. I just love how they play around with tone. And those are the kind of movies and things I want to do, where if you look at a movie like No Country for Old Men, and then you look at a movie like Raising Arizona, I don't think you think those are the same filmmakers. You go like, those are different, those are two different, those would have to be, you know, like two different people. And I just love how they play with tone. And so that's what I love to do. And we try to do it obviously in the movie some, and obviously we try to do it on Insecure, but I love like watching scenes kind of play out the way, and movies kind of play out the way where you don't know, oh, what is this gonna be? I just know when I see a Coen Brothers movies, it's gonna be good. And I don't have to know if it's a comedy or a Western or whatever. I just know it's gonna be a good movie.
So you brought up Insecure. I'm a huge, huge fan of Insecure. I love it so much.
Oh, thank you.
I love being able to see, as an Angelino, the city in a totally different light. It feels way more like real LA than something like Entourage or whatever, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that's great about that show and this is that you're able to take the cities that the film and the show exist in and basically make them a character. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you chose Memphis and what it was like kind of representing Memphis in this piece?
Yeah, I mean, it really came down to Memphis was obviously when you set the world in barbecue, and the fact that, you know, Courtney's character is like, he's wanting his son to take it over, where barbecue I knew had to be so serious for the family. If it's like, you have to follow these footsteps, then there's only a few places where barbecue is that serious. And so it kind of came down between Texas, Memphis, North Carolina, and Kansas City, St. Louis-ish kind of an area. And I felt like, well, what's an interesting place on screen I haven't really seen before? And I felt like Texas, I've seen Texas in a lot of various movies. I kind of couldn't wrap my head around what North Carolina was going to be like as an identity. So it really came down between that sort of, again, the Kansas City and Memphis area. And as I kept doing research about the cities, why Memphis became a thing was, as I started thinking about Lewis and how serious and how much reverence he had for his father, right? And the idea of like, I'm going to drop out of school and do this over. Like, he would have watched his dad essentially would have been around the same time the civil rights movement would have been. Like, Courtney's character is in his 50s. And so he would have been, you know, in the 60s, he would have been, you know, 7, 8 years old, you know? And so that's a very impressionable age, especially for a son to a father. And so obviously Memphis is where, you know, so much civil rights happened. Obviously it's where King was assassinated with the Lorraine Motel. It's the movement of the I Am a Man posters. So much, you know, soul music is out of there. You know, the like Stax Records, Al Green, Isaac Hayes, obviously Elvis Presley, Sun Records, obviously. It's a city that's like 70% African American. So to me, it just became like, oh yeah, like that's that makes sense of why Lewis, because it's all about character. It's always about character, what feels right? And so, like the movie, I don't think you feel this movie in LA. You're like, barbecue is not a serious thing in LA. Who cares? But all of that to me would tell me why Lewis would revere, if he watched his father get like dog sicked on him or being hosed, that would have, and watch his father still thrive. Like the backstory to me about Lewis's father, not to get too far off your question, but to like circle back, was like, I always viewed that Lewis, what I told Courtney was like, Lewis's father was a garbage man that could just barbecue. And he was like trying to get loans and finally could like work up enough to open a barbecue restaurant. So he literally watched his dad like start from nothing and build this restaurant that kind of became a pinnacle in the community. And in the meantime, like marching and protesting and going through everything. So the thought of, if your dad has a stroke and this dream can end, this family has like been from a garbage man, whatever, and worked his way up to owning a restaurant, you're not gonna let your father's, like, that's how serious it was. You're like, my school doesn't matter. Me being in college for whatever I want to do doesn't matter. That's how serious it is for him. And so that's why Memphis to me became such a strong character in that, because it shaped Lewis's whole drive in the whole movie. It's who he is. He is Memphis. And so so that's where that came from. And I felt like you don't really see Memphis in movies like Hustle and Flow, which is a very specific kind of like hood Memphis. But there's so much other Memphis that was out there that just became so much more interesting and just different to see in movies. And so I wanted to just see that. And the people there were just so helpful to show, because again, that's what people think of Memphis when everybody just kept telling me, they were just like, as long as your actors don't go around talking about like, what's up, man? Like Terrence Howard was in Hustle and Flow, they're like, it's good, we're good with it. So they were like, sometimes that was like the social media response. I just ain't nobody was saying Maine. And because again, that's what people think of Memphis. It's like, I remember when I'm from LA, and I remember when Boys in the Hood, like the movie came out, I had friends I started college that year, and everybody was asking me who got to college, where's Crenshaw Boulevard? They were like, is that really what it, because they were like, that's all I know is what I've seen in a movie. So that's all people think about Memphis is like that one movie. And so there's so much more to that city, obviously. And so to me, it was just important to show all of that, beauty in the movie.
And I think you did that really well with the music too. I love the soundtrack. I know Eric and I talked about the soundtrack, and it just, the selected songs that you have in Paris and in Memphis, like it gives it so much energy and flavor too. Can we find that soundtrack somewhere?
Yeah, I put it on, it's on Spotify. It's called the Uncorked playlist. Every song that's in the movie, every single song, if you, I think it's under me, but it should just be Uncorked playlist. If you do it in Spotify, it has every single song. And if you go to my Instagram page, it's also posted on there too.
Very good. So, Prentice, I have to say I thoroughly love the movie. It's absolutely brilliant and heartfelt and entertaining. However, I was secretly really wanting a different ending. So, how did you choose that ending, and will there be a sequel?
I don't have any plans for a sequel. What I love about the ending, I written the ending before where he passed, and I went back to it after a year, and it felt false. And it felt false to me for lots of reasons. One, I mean, as you guys know, that test is a test that less than like 300 people in the world have passed. So like the odds of him passing it on his first time out is almost impossible. And I also feel like a lot into life, you don't get everything you want the first time out, right? A lot of people don't pass the bar exam their first time. A lot of people don't pass their medical boards first. A lot of people don't finish college in 5 years. A lot of people their first business they try doesn't always succeed. To me, people become interesting when they get knocked down, right? The best part of a fight is what happens when the guy hits the canvas sometimes. And you go, is he gonna get up? That's the drama, right? That's the real drama. Not if he wins the fight, that's okay. But if a guy can come back after he's been knocked down, that's kind of the point. And so to me, that was the point that Courtney character was telling him, his son, which is to be a man, it's about, he says, like when things get hard, you quit, which is like a little boy. Like little kids, when things get hard, they want to quit. Like when my daughter is taking violin and she's like, it's hard, I don't want to do this anymore. It's like, yeah, that's what little kids do, right? But like to your point, like you have a business and it took 5 years to where you want to get to today. And there were times, I'm sure, where you wanted to be like, is this worth it, right? Is all this worth it? Is this energy worth it? And you persevered, and the story is in the perseverance. And so for me, Elijah really stepped into being a man by saying, I didn't pass, but I'm going to go back. So to me, I don't even need to know if he ever passes or not. to me, there were certain benchmarks the movie had to succeed on. A lot of times you don't get the thing, but you learn the lesson. And to me, it was like, are he and his father in a better place? I go, yes. Does his father understand? Yes. Does he have a commitment to see things through, even if it gets hard? Do I need to know if he passes, or do I just need to know he's also in a better place he stepped into being a man, which is, I don't need my father's permission to do this. I got your acceptance, but I don't necessarily need it. And I'm going to go back and get back in the ring again. I'm going to get back out there. And I think, like, again, to movies that I think sometimes with people of color, our movies, we feel like we have to give this sort of like saccharine, like everything is all good ending, which I think also like makes our story seem like one dimensional, versus like in the end of Good Will Hunting, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if he's going to get Minnie Driver back. You don't know if he's going to like go to California. I mean, the end scene is just him driving away, like leaving Robin Williams a note and like hitting the road. Like, you don't know, but you know he's healed. Like, you know he's got his healing in that obviously in that very infamous scene, and he's in a better place. And I think that's the point of the movie. Not is he going to become a super mathematician to the whatever. It's like, no, he, like, you know, Ben Affleck is like, yeah, like, I never want to see you again. Like, that would be the biggest dream to me, is to go to your house and never see you again. And he's gone. And we never address, is he going to keep talking to Ben Affleck? Is he and Robin Williams going to keep having a relationship? Are we going to know what's going to happen? It's not happy. And I feel like that's life. Life isn't, getting everything is like fake to me in life. Nobody gets everything all at once. And so to me, it was just needed to be like, he's in a better place. He's stepping forward. I don't have to answer that question. And it's almost not a question to me that like is necessarily relevant. I just go like, the father and him are in a better place, and obviously he's in a better place as a man too. So
was that always your intended ending?
Originally I wrote one where he passed, and when I went back and read it, I was like, I hate this.
So one last question about your own relationship with wine, Prentice. How has that changed? I had to laugh when I was watching Somm again yesterday, and some of the descriptors they were using, like the new tennis ball and the granny purse. Like, are you like more of a wine connoisseur now? Do you use fancy descriptors, or do you?
No. I mean, I what I will say is I know what I like in my palate, because I understand what's happening in the bottle more. And I'm more intrigued by, like, when I first started drinking, all I drank were like drakes of wines, because I was like, this is new to me. And my buddy was like, you're gonna get off Rieslings very quickly. And he was right. Like, I used to drink very like softer reds, but that's growth. Like, your palate matures, right? Like everything, you know? And so I can kind of describe things I like, but I'm in no way, there's so much wine. That's so much out there that I can kind of say what I like as a flavor profile. But I've also learned to never say what you don't like, because I remember I used to be like, I don't like Chardonnay, they're too buttery. And then the guy was like, well, you just already drinking buttery Chardonnay. You need to drink some other Chardonnays. And so I've learned never to say I never drink anything. I just will say I don't like this kind of a something. But I've learned never to say you don't like something, because you just maybe haven't found what you like in that thing yet. Is that fair, Jenny? Is that fair to say?
That is fair, because I have an unoaked Chardonnay. So
hey,
I think you would like that one.
I would love that.
So Jenny, since we're back to you, I would love to first of all say that how awesome it is that you pushed away all the naysayers and we're able to, you know, get your dream off to an amazing start. Can you tell us a little bit about the concept of an urban winery? Kansas is definitely not known for its grapes, so how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted a winery that could be separate from a vineyard. So like you mentioned, Eric, here in Kansas, we just don't have that strong reputation for growing grapes, even though we do it well. I just wanted to have the option to source grapes from all across the nation and to build relationships with all different types of growers. So I actually like California wine quite a bit and have found several growers out in California that have supplied me with some great grapes and juice. And then I recently found a grower here in Northeast Kansas who's growing Vitis vinifera. So I get Chardonnay from California, which is the Vitis vinifera type of grape. And now I can find Chardonnay here in Kansas, and same with Cabernet Sauvignon. So I wanted to have the flexibility to work with all different types of growers across the nation and find the best fruit and grapes possible to make wine. So that's kind of the concept of an urban winery, is to be in the city, not necessarily associated with one particular vineyard, but have the option to source grapes and fruit from all across the nation. But I wanted to be in the heart of the city because that's where the customer base is. Here in Kansas, a lot of the wineries are in, the country or remote locations and can be kind of challenging to get to, especially a part of your work week. And so I wanted to be easily accessible to my customers so that they could come in, over their lunch hour or for happy hour and still enjoy an authentic winery and see the actual process of wine being made on site. Here at our venue, we do have a tasting room. We host events here. We make our wine on site. And then we just have a lot of fun kind of curating different entertainment. Like we have jazz on Saturday nights. And it's just a lot of fun being here in the downtown area of Wichita.
Yeah, Lela tells me it's a beautiful venue. So when I come back, I would love to come and spend some time with the winery. It sounds amazing. Okay, we've been talking a lot about wine. I think it's time to taste some wine. Do you want to take it away, Jenny?
Yes, absolutely. So I hope everyone has their Jenny Dawn Cellars 2018 Chardonnay, or if you don't have this particular bottle, just grab a glass of wine and you can follow along. I have a kind of 5-step process that I follow when I'm doing a wine tasting. So I like using Riedel glasses, and this is a white wine glass, so it's a little smaller than a red wine glass. So I'm just going to pour a little bit, and then we can go ahead and get started here. So with this wine, we are in particularly really known here at Jenny Dawn Cellars for our Chardonnays. They've been the most awarded thus far in our portfolio. So this wine has received 92 points from the New World International Wine Competition and a couple silver medals. But then our last year's vintage, our 2017 Chardonnay, won Best of Class in the San Francisco Chronicle Wine Competition. So I have a secret blend where we primarily use stainless steel to kind of ferment the base of the wine. So about 85% stays in stainless steel. Then we put 15% in oak. So it gives the wine some nice roundness, but it's still more crisp, light, and acidic. So Prentice mentioned the heavily oaked Chardonnays. I call them butter bombs. And so that's not what this is. It's really nice and light. This wine actually comes from Sonoma Valley. And you may be asking yourself, okay, where is that? So it's in California, and it's just about 45 miles north of San Francisco, so kind of in the heart of wine country. And it's 17 miles of this picturesque valley that sits between two mountain ranges. So it's just a gorgeous, beautiful place and great for growing grapes. They've been growing grapes there for a very, very, very long time. Now, when I do a wine tasting, I typically look at appearance, aroma, body, taste, and finish. So that 5-step process that I mentioned earlier. And so when I look at appearance, you're really looking for the clarity of the wine. Wine should really be clear, not cloudy, and free from any sedimentation. So I just always tilt the glass at a 45-degree angle and just kind of look at inside of it. This wine is clear. And then you can also examine the color. I call this like a yellow kind of straw color. And then I poured probably a little bit too much for swirling, but you can swirl the wine, which aerates it. And then you can look at the legs to kind of indicate the alcohol percentage. So the legs are the little drips that you see on the side of your glass. And with this wine, this is actually a heavier alcohol percentage wine. It's 15.12, so you definitely wanted to be like slow sipping this wine, or you could get pretty tipsy very quickly. Aroma is the next step, which honestly, it's my favorite step. Like, I love the smell of wine. I just absolutely do. And so you want to give it a nice swirl again, and then take a deep inhale and see what scents you can isolate. So with aromas, before you even do this step, you want to make sure that you're not personally wearing anything distracting like perfume, or if you've recently smoked a cigarette or been around smoke, that's going to kind of mute all of the aromas that you can get from the wine. So you want to be kind of in a place where there aren't any off-putting scents kind of around you. But swirling just allows the wine to aerate, and it intensifies those aromas. So what I smell is lemongrass. So this is a highly citrusy wine, but then I also get some fruit notes of green apple and pear. I feel like it has a really beautiful nose. So the next step is body, which body is the impression of weight on the palate. So wine should have some structure to it, and it shouldn't be super, you can have light, medium, or heavy bodied wine, but it shouldn't feel flabby or flimsy. Even a light wine should feel really nice on the palate. So I'm going to take a sip now. So most white wines are going to be light in nature, but this still had a weight to it. So I'm calling this a light plus. And it coated my entire tongue. And what I love is, even though this is a citrusy and acidic wine, I didn't get any sort of bitterness at the tip of my tongue. So I liked that a lot. So now going to taste, can put a little bit more of the wine and take another sip of the wine. And then what you're looking for is if the scents that you could smell end up being coming flavors on the tongue. So if I could smell lemongrass, I want to taste lemongrass. If I could smell green apple, I want to taste green apple. And then you also, in this step, get to check the acidity, or if it was a red wine, we check our tannins. So let's do that.
I can definitely get the green apple, Jenny.
Yes, I love the green apple. Again, lemongrass, citrus. This is a highly acidic wine. The acid is pretty high on it as well. I think because it's a young wine, it's going to become less acidic over time. And so that's something that it's always fun to see how wine changes in the bottle. That's kind of something that's unique about wine, is it won't always stay the same each time you taste it. It changes over time. So now the finish is an aftertaste. And so with wine, you want an aftertaste with the wines that you're drinking. That's a quality metric. And so the wine, the flavor should linger on your tongue, after you swallow the wine. So we can take another sip and evaluate the finish. So it definitely has like a smooth finish and a long finish. It's still there on your tongue once you're done. So I like Chardonnay. Chardonnay is considered kind of one of those noble grapes that, has a strong beginning in Europe and in France. And it pairs with so many different foods. I think Chardonnay is very versatile, especially when it comes to seafood. So mussels, clams, shellfish. But then something that I eat a lot of is salmon. And so for me, the perfect dinner is like salmon with some asparagus, diced potatoes with a bunch of veggies. or like steamed rice. And that's like the perfect meal with Chardonnay. So this was just a very quick wine tasting. What were some of your thoughts? What did you think, Lela?
Yeah, I loved it. I love this Chardonnay. I'm also not a buttery Chardonnay or oaky. I prefer typically French Chardonnays, old world wine. But this is very light and refreshing. And actually, I'm gonna make salmon tonight, and I've been using a little bit of wine to poach my salmon in, which actually is really flavor too. But it's lovely, and as soon as you can ship to California, Eric and Prentice, you have to order some wine.
I'm very jealous
Yeah.
that you guys are drinking this right now.
I know, I'm sad I'm not quite there yet. Very soon. We're like one or two forms away from being able to ship to California.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful Chardonnay, and thank you so much for that lesson. It's always, wine is so complex, and like it's so interesting to me, like thinking about all the complexities of it, and you can kind of go down a rabbit hole with it, I think. So
yes, you can. And I think that's one of the things, my approach to wine is making it simple. So I've been teaching winication classes for about 3 years, and you just want to speak in terms that people can understand and relate to, and just demystify the whole wine experience. So one of the things that I'm working on is creating like a survey that customers could take before they look at my wines to purchase, so that it would match them up with wines that they would like. Because I think it's really intimidating going to like a website or a liquor store and not really being sure if what you purchase is something you're going to personally enjoy. So anytime that we can, help people match up their personal preferences to a wine that we have, that's what all of this is about, is helping people find their wine preference.
So, okay, I'm curious for you and Prentice, what are your go-to wines, whether it's a specific bottle or varietal? Do you have any specific wines, or is that like asking people to choose a child?
Prentice, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't have a specific like wine maker in terms. I mean, I really love Syrahs. So anytime that's a Syrah that has like a lot of tannin, that's like a kick in the teeth, I just love. So I would say that's probably like I really like Andrew Murray. Some stuff out of Zacha Mesa, which is nice. But really, as long as it's Syrah has some like bite to it, and I just love that, especially like with like a ribeye or something like that. Yeah.
I love the barnyard. Like there's a barnyard descriptor for Syrah and Shiraz, that like sort of earthy, ethereal. I love that. But it sounds bad. Barnyard. Jenny, what about you? What's your go-to?
So I am a seasonal wine drinker. So heading into like spring and summer, I want something kind of light and easy to drink that doesn't feel heavy because it's hot outside. So I really love rosés. There's so many different styles of rosés out there. But then as we transition to fall and winter, then I want something that's going to be a little bit warm, that goes with more of the food that I'm eating then. And so I love Malbecs, and then my Pinot Noirs and Cabs. Chardonnay is one, though, that I can drink all year round.
Okay, so last question, stem or no stem? Lela says she has no stemware. I have both because I'm, fancy. So does it make a difference? What do you think?
So honestly, for white wine, I like to have a stem, because if you're holding the bowl, then it warms up the wine. So it just depends on what you're drinking.
That's fair.
What about you, Prentice? Stem or no stem?
I agree. Say if it's red, no stem. I prefer stem just as a general thing, but if I'm doing champagne or white, I agree. I think stem is always good for that purpose of like not wanting to warm the drink.
I just have no stem because I'm uncoordinated and I have 2 children. And
I get that.
Stem's broke.
That's fair points.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you both
Makes
so much
sense.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you to our amazing guests, Jenny and Prentice, for joining us this afternoon, taking an hour out of your days to join us and talking about Uncorked and wine. Make sure to share Uncorked with your friends, streaming on Netflix. If they haven't seen it, it's an awesome film and it's perfect for right now. It's uplifting and light and beautiful and warm, and that's the kind of film that we need right now. Make plans to order your wine from Jenny Don Cellars. They ship to 38 states, California coming soon. And if you're local, you can go into the winery or you can do curbside pickup. You can learn more about mamafilm by following us on Facebook or Instagram, and you can even become a member of our village. And we wish you all good health. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.